The moment we loaded this game, everything felt off. You know when something seems normal, but deep down your brain is screaming at you that it isn't. That was this game. At first glance, it looked like just another forest map, trees swaying, crickets chirping, fog rolling across the ground. Harmless, right, that's what we thought, but within seconds, something didn't add up. The air looked too still, the shadows too sharp, and there was this wrongness, like the game had a heartbeat. And then, tucked way in the distance, we saw it. A tree that looked like it didn't belong, not to this map, not even to this world. It didn't just stand there, it seemed to lean forward, like it was waiting for us. The more I stared, the more I realized something was broken. The bark wasn't bark at all. It shimmered like static on a TV screen. I laughed nervously, tried to brush it off, but my hands were sweating on the controller. You ever get that feeling where your brain says, don't look at it, but your curiosity says you have to? Yeah, that's exactly what this tree did to us. We couldn't look away, and here's where it got worse. Every time we took a step forward, the sound in the game shifted. The crickets stopped, the wind cut out, even our footsteps sounded muffled, like the game itself was swallowing the noise. That silence, it wasn't comforting. It was heavy. It pressed against our ears until the only thing we could hear was our own breathing. We looked at each other in real life and just froze. Do we keep walking? Do we run? But somehow, we both knew there was no turning back now. I swear, the closer we got, the less real the tree seemed. It flickered as if the game couldn't decide whether it was really there. The branches stretched at angles that trees shouldn't be able to move, like elbows bending the wrong way. And then, right as I reached the edge of the clearing, my screen stuttered, like a glitch. For a split second, the tree wasn't a tree at all. It was a face, a twisted hollow, doubt face staring directly at me. I blinked, it was gone, back to a tree. But my heart was pounding like I'd just sprinted a mile. I told myself I imagined it, but my friend swore he saw the same thing. That's when it hit us. This wasn't a normal map asset. The devs had put this here on purpose. This was a trap, a test, something. And we walked straight into it. And trust me, you're going to want to see what happens when we finally decide to touch it. Because that's the moment everything falls apart. We decided to keep moving, even though everything in us was saying don't. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction, thick fog wrapping around our ankles as if it wanted to drag us down. The only thing keeping us sane was the small circle of light from our flashlight. But even that wasn't right. The beam seemed too weak, almost swallowed by the air. Every time we tilted it toward the trees, the shadows shifted, not away from the light, but toward it, like they were reaching for us. Step by step, the soundscape of the game began to die. First the crickets vanished, then the rustling leaves went quiet. Even the sound of our own footsteps grew hollow, like we weren't walking on dirt anymore but on something softer, something unnatural. My palms were slippery with sweat, gripping the controller so hard my knuckles hurt. My friend whispered, "Do you hear that?" But there was nothing, just this crushing silence. That made my ears ring, and that silence, that's scarier than any monster. Then, faintly, we noticed it, a glow, barely visible through the fog at first, like a lantern someone left behind. It flickered, but not like fire. It was steady, almost humming with energy. I angled the flashlight, expecting maybe a campsite or a bug, doubt light source in the game, but no, it was coming from tree, that same tree we had seen before, only now it was closer, much closer than it should have been. The weirdest part, we hadn't moved in its direction. We were wandering off the path, yet somehow the glow followed us. Every time we glanced back to check our bearings, the tree was there again, sitting on the horizon, glowing faintly like it was calling us. It didn't make sense. It felt like the map itself was folding around us, steering us where it wanted. At this point, I started laughing nervously, the way you do when your brain is too freaked out to process what's happening. My friend wasn't laughing, though. He went quiet, hunched forward, completely locked into the screen. That's when I realized his character had stopped moving entirely. I asked him why, and his voice cracked when he said it's whispering. I thought he was joking until I turned my volume up. I froze. There it was, soft, almost buried in the background hum of the game, but clear enough to make out whispers, words we couldn't understand, repeating over and over, layered like a dozen voices speaking at once. It wasn't coming from the forest. It wasn't coming from the fog. It was coming directly from the tree. And here's the worst part. Every step we took toward that glow, the whispering grew louder, clearer, sharper, until it sounded less like voices and more like breathing, ragged, heavy breathing. At one point I swear it synced with my own. Every inhale, every exhale, it matched me. I could feel it in my chest. We stood there, controllers in hand, arguing whether to keep going. Part of me wanted to shut the game off completely, just to break that suffocating tension, but another part of me needed to see it, needed to know what that glow really was, and that curiosity, that's what always gets you in trouble. So we pressed forward, 1 step, 2 steps. The glow got brighter, almost blinding against the dark backdrop of the forest. My flashlight flickered, the beam cutting out for a split second, and in that brief moment of darkness, I swear I saw something move between the branches. Not the wind, not an animal, something that shouldn't exist in a game like this. We both froze, staring at the screen, waiting for it to move again, but it didn't. The branches were still, the glow was stronger. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the whispers anymore, and then, just as we stepped into the clearing, the entire game stuttered. The frame rate dropped, the glow flared, and the screen warped like static. That's when I realized we hadn't just been walking toward the tree had been pulling us in, and as soon as we crossed that invisible line into its clearing, everything around us changed. The second we crossed into that clearing, the game felt different, not just visually, physically. My controller had this faint vibration, like a heartbeat pulsing in my hands, and the soundscape went completely haywire. At first, I thought my headphones were glitching, because the forest sounds didn't just fade, they bent. They warped into this low droning hum that wrapped around my skull like it was inside my head instead of the game. And there it was again, that tree, now right in front of us. No more distance, no more fog disguising it. Up close, it was worse. The bark wasn't bark, it looked like skin, pale, stretched tight, crawling with cracks that pulsed like veins. Every few seconds it rippled as though something underneath was shifting, alive, breathing. I whispered, half joking, this thing has a heartbeat, but deep down, I wasn't joking at all. My friend leaned in, squinting, and then suddenly dropped his controller. He swore he saw it move, like the entire trunk twisted ever so slightly to face him. We stared at it for a solid minute, waiting for something, anything to confirm it. And then it happened. The whispering returned, louder this time, layered with a static crackle, but it wasn't random anymore. It was clearer, almost words. I couldn't make them out, but they crawled over my skin like ants. I tried to laugh it off. It's probably just corrupted audio files or some creepy dev Easter egg, I said, but then mid-sentence, the whispers stopped, and right when the silence hit boom, the ground under our characters shook. Not normal shake either, not like an earthquake animation. It felt uneven, jagged, like something massive was clawing just beneath the surface. That's when we froze. Literally, in real life, we stopped breathing. My chest tightened. My heart was hammering so fast, it felt like I was going to pass out. The screen glitched again, static cutting across the edges like tearing paper, and for a split second, the tree's texture flickered away, showing something else. Not wood, not bark, a hollow, doubt face, eyes carved deep into the trunk, staring at us. I couldn't believe what I saw, so I blinked hard, but when the screen cleared, it was back to looking like a normal tree. That's when I said out loud, nope, nope, I'm not crazy. You saw that too, right? And the way my friend just nodded, why, died, told me everything. We both saw it. At this point, we debated quitting, like honestly shutting down the game and walking away, but then something happened that made it impossible to stop. My friend's character suddenly moved on its own. He wasn't touching the controller, I swear. His avatar just started walking, slowly, step by step, toward the tree. He tried to push back, he spammed every button, nothing worked. The character was being pulled, and the worst part, my screen showed the exact same thing happening to me. My character's legs moved forward on their own, footsteps crunching louder than they should have, echoing unnaturally like they were happening in the room with us. We both panicked, yelling, trying to unplug controllers, but nothing stopped it. The tree was reeling us in. Then, just as our characters reached the roots, everything froze. Not just the characters, the entire game. My screen went black for 2 seconds, and when it came back, we weren't in the same forest anymore. The trees around us were gone. The ground was covered in this black tar-like sludge. The sky overhead wasn't a sky at all. It looked like cracked glass, glowing faintly red through the fractures. But the tree was still there. Only now it was massive, towering above us like a skyscraper. Its branches stretched across the broken sky like claws. Its bark was splitting apart, oozing with something dark, and its roots slithered across the ground like snakes. Every inch of me wanted to scream, but I couldn't even find my voice. And then came the sound, not whispers this time, laughter, faint, distorted, like a recording playing backward. It built up, circling around us until it was impossible to tell where it was coming from. My chest tightened. I wanted to shut the game off, but I couldn't. My hand hovered over the power button and wouldn't move. It was like the game had me. That's when I realized something terrifying. The screen wasn't just glitching, it was reflecting. Between the static, I saw my own room, my desk, my hands on the controller. For a split second, I saw me inside the game, and just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the tree whispered again. Only this time it wasn't some strange language. It said my name. The moment the tree whispered my name, I froze. Not in the game, in real life. You ever feel every muscle in your body lock up, like your brain is screaming, "Don't move"? That's what happened. My friend looked at me like he heard it too, and when I asked him later, he swore the game had whispered his name instead. That's when I knew this wasn't just creepy programming. This was personal. Then, without warning, the world shifted again. 1 second we were standing in that black tar clearing, and the next the entire map snapped into something else. The tree stayed in place, but everything around it twisted. The ground began to ripple like water. Trees stretched upward, bending at impossible angles, their branches scraping across the cracked sky like nails on glass. The sound of the forest came back, but it wasn't right, too sharp, too fast, like the audio was sped up. My ears started ringing, like the sound was clawing at my skull. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. No matter where I turned the camera, the tree was always in front of me, always. I spun my joystick, did a full circle, tree in every direction, as if the world was folding around it, trapping us in its orbit. The branches seemed to get longer the more I looked, stretching toward me, bending down like fingers trying to reach. That's when the roots began moving, slowly at first, twitching against the tar, like soil, then faster, slithering like snakes across the ground. One root slammed into the earth, right in front of my character's feet, the controller jolting hard in my hands. I screamed, not even ashamed of it. My friend cursed out loud and yanked his headset off. He thought the rumble was broken. It wasn't. It was the game syncing with us, like it knew how to make us feel trapped. The air grew heavier. I don't even know how to describe it, but it was like the game had weight now. Every breath I took felt thicker, like the room I was sitting in was part of the game world. That line between reality and screen. Gone, then the sky started cracking. At first tiny fractures, glowing faintly red, but soon they spiderwebbed across the entire sky dome above us. Each crack made this horrible screeching noise, like metal being torn apart. It was unbearable. We covered our ears, but the sound was inside our heads, impossible to block out. And just when I thought the whole world was about to shatter, everything went quiet again. We just stood there, staring at the tree, waiting, My controller buzzed faintly like a slow heartbeat. My friend whispered, "Don't move," but before I could respond, my character moved on its own again. This time not walking forward, but tilting its head back, forced to look up at the tree's canopy. And what I saw nearly made me shut the game off right then and there. The branches weren't branches anymore. They were arms, dozens, maybe hundreds of them, stretching out from the trunk. Thin, pale arms with long, bony fingers reaching out across the sky, and in between them, faces. Faces pressed into the bark like something trapped inside, their mouths opening in silent screams. Some were moving, their eyes rolling, their mouths stretching too wide, like they were alive inside the wood. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might pass out. I begged my friend to quit, to turn it off, but he just sat there frozen, eyes wide, staring at the screen. And then the laughter came back. Not faint this time, but loud, clear, booming, like dozens of voices laughing all at once. The screen distorted, the colors inverted, and for a split second, I saw my own webcam reflected in the game again. My face, staring back at me through the tree's hollow. I panicked, slammed my controller down, but before I could shut the game off, a message appeared on the screen. Just one line, written in jagged, glitching text, "Do not look away." And that's when it happened. My friend whispered, "It's moving closer." I looked back at the screen, and he was right. The tree was no longer in the distance, no longer towering above us. It was right there, inches away from our characters. And with every blink of static, it got closer and closer, until the entire screen was filled with that hollowed, breathing bark. Then the screen cut to black, and in that silence, I swear to you, we heard knocking, not in the game. In the room with us, the knocking didn't stop. At first it was faint, like knuckles tapping gently on wood, but it kept getting louder, heavier, until it sounded like fists pounding on a door. Problem was, we didn't have a door in the room behind us. My friend spun around in his chair, pale as a ghost, but there was nothing, just the dark corner of the room. Meanwhile, the game screen had come back, glitching, flickering like an old VHS tape on fast forward, and then the tree moved, not swayed, not glitched, moved. The hollow in its trunk stretched wide, peeling open like a mouth, bark, cracked, splinters flying out like shards of bone. The inside glowed a deep, burning red, pulsing with every flicker of static. It was like looking into a furnace that was alive. My friend muttered, "Nope, nope, nope," and reached for the power button on his PC. But before he could press it, our characters were grabbed. The roots shot out of the ground, wrapping around our avatar's legs. They didn't just hold us, they squeezed, shaking the controller violently like they were crushing bone. The sound was horrific. A deep crunching noise like branches snapping, but layered with something wetter. I'll never forget that sound. We were yelling, panicking, mashing every button we could. But nothing worked. The characters struggled, clawing at the roots, but the tree kept pulling. And here's the thing, every time the roots tightened, I felt it. Not in the controller, not in the game, in my legs. Like phantom pressure squeezing my calves. I looked down for half a second, and I swear, I saw shadows crawling across my floor, winding up toward my chair. I shot back up to the screen, terrified to look away again. The laughter started again, but now it was mixed with something else. Crying, dozens of voices, weeping, screaming, overlapping in a chorus of pain. The faces in the bark were moving, their mouths opening wider, their eyes darting side to side like they were alive, begging us to help them. One of the faces pressed so hard against the surface it actually pushed out, stretching like a balloon ready to burst. My friend ripped off his headset, shaking his head violently, saying, "I can hear it in my room, not the game, my room." That was it for me. I reached for the monitor's power button, but before I could touch it, the trees spoke. Not a whisper. This time, not distorted, clear, a guttural, deep voice that shook through the speakers. "Don't leave." I froze. My whole body went ice cold, and then the screen shook violently, the camera zooming straight into the hollow of the tree. The red glow expanded, swallowing everything until we were inside it. The interior wasn't empty. It was filled with rows of figures, humanoid shapes twisted and Bound in roots, their faces melted into the wood. Their eyes flickered open all at once, hundreds of them staring right at us. The sound design was unbearable. Static, screams, whispers, all colliding in one horrifying wave. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped the controller. And then, out of the red glow, something crawled forward. It wasn't a figure at first. It was shape, black and formless, dragging itself out of the hollow with jerky, unnatural movements. Its limbs bent wrong, snapping and twisting as it pulled itself free. When it finally lifted its head, the face it showed us wasn't a monster's. It was mine, my face, pale, hollow-eyed, stretched across bark like the others, but smiling. I actually yelped, jumped back in my chair, because the thing didn't just look like me. It moved like me. Every tiny twitch of my hand on the controller it mirrored. Every time I blinked, it blinked a split second later. My friend leaned back, shaking his head, whispering, "That's you, that's literally you." And then it laughed, my own voice laughing back at me from the screen. The screen shook harder, the roots pulled tighter, and I could feel it in my chest like the game was sucking the air out of the room. My monitor dimmed, flickered, and the only thing I could see was that version of me, dragging itself out of the tree. And just as it reached the edge of the screen, half in the game, half out, everything went black again. Silence, dead silence. We sat there, waiting, breathing heavy, staring at the blank screen. And then the knocking came back, louder this time, and it was right behind me. The knocking behind me didn't stop. Each thud shook through the room, harder, faster, like something desperate to get in. My friend whispered, "Don't turn around." But how could I not? I felt air shift against the back of my neck, like someone was standing there, breathing. I held my breath, gripping the controller so hard my hands ached. On screen, the tree began to pulse. That hollow mouth stretched wider and wider, glowing so bright it nearly blinded us. The faces in the bark screamed silently, mouths distorting, eyes rolling in terror. Roots lashed out across the screen like whips, slamming into the ground and sending shockwaves through our characters. And then, my doppelganger, the thing that crawled out of the tree, stepped fully into the light. It didn't stop at the screen this time. I swear to you, I saw it lean out of the monitor. The glow lit up my entire desk, casting my own shadow across the wall, but it wasn't moving when I moved. Its smile stretched wider than mine ever could, teeth blackened, skin stretched thin like bark. I could hear it breathing, not in the game, but in my room. My friend yelled, slammed his PC shut, the whir of the fans cutting off instantly, but mine stayed on. The laughter started again. My voice, layered, distorted, but undeniably mine. The sound filled the room, vibrating through my chest, rattling the walls. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I wanted to run, but my legs felt cemented to the floor. And then the knocking. Oh God, the knocking stopped, replaced by something worse, a whisper, right in my ear. "Stay." I spun around so fast I nearly fell out of my chair. Nothing, just the empty corner of the room. But when I turned back to the monitor, the tree wasn't there anymore. The entire game world had gone pitch black. All I could see was the text, glowing red across the middle of the screen. "You are part of me now." And then silence. For a full 30 seconds, nothing happened. No sound, no movement, just black. My friend sat frozen, whispering, turn it off," but my hands wouldn't move. Finally, the game just closed. No crash, no error message. It shut down clean, like we had never even played it. The desktop stared back at me, empty, innocent, like nothing had happened. But here's the thing, my webcam light, it was still on. I don't even use my webcam. I yanked the cable out of the port, ripped it from the desk, threw it across the room, but that little green glow lingered in my mind. That night, neither of us slept. Every creak in the house felt like footsteps. Every shadow felt like those branches stretching closer. And I swear, when I closed my eyes, I could still hear the whispers. The worst part, they weren't in the game anymore. They were saying my name over and over. So yeah, safe to say we are never, ever opening that game again. Not at night, not during the day, not ever. If you think we're exaggerating, if you think this was just some creepy Easter egg, I dare you, go find that map. Go look for that tree and see what happens when you touch it. But don't blame me if it follows you back, because if there's one thing I learned from that night, it's this. Some trees aren't meant to be found, and some games aren't meant to be played. Anyway, sweet dreams, everyone. Hope you're not watching this in the dark.